Welcome to episode 97 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak with Michael Megel, a developer from Germany who's created a VSCode plugin called the PowerApps Helper. It helps to visualize dependencies of your solutions. It also can be used to create custom connectors and visualize lots of different items in your environment. Scott and Michael also go through a lot of ALM stuff. I kind of sit around for the ride. And it's very interesting even for me as well. So if you are interested in being able to see any dependencies of your solution or diving more into ALM practices, this is definitely the episode for you. Sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and my co-host, Scott. No, I'm not in the Gap commercial drill. Scott, how's it going?
Very good, thanks, Daryl. No affiliation to any clothing store whatsoever.
For our podcast listeners, he's wearing a gray shirt underneath a black, V-neck sweater. So it just looked very almost Apple-ish as far as,
Yeah, go for the polar neck. I mean, this weekend I was actually wearing a lot of plaid because, obviously I'm in Canada. So I think plaid is like the national, it's a uniform practically, actually, interesting, I was actually up a cherry tree. So I was kind of doing the whole lumberjack thing. I was, pruning that time of year, you got to prune the trees back. Okay. And I was using a kind of mini chainsaw, which is quite exciting. Yes, and so, I have all my fingers and, I'm good. So that was the first time I've used it, but it was sliced through that tree like butter. Talking of new tools, actually, in the toolbox, yes. We'll be talking to somebody who has a new tool just been released.
Actually, he's kind of new even to the Dataverse world as well. So our guest today is Michael Megel. He is an enthusiast for technology, hashtag MS Power Apps, hashtag Power Addicts, hashtag Azure DevOps, hashtag MS Dynamics 365 BC, an enterprise architect and DevOps engineer at Cosmo Group, and hashtag Never Stop Learning. So Michael has never listened to one of our podcasts before, so he doesn't know that I just read off your Twitter profile. So Michael, if you're wondering where that came from,
he won't know.
That's where it came from. So Michael, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
Fine.
You and I were chatting a little bit ahead of time. You're more newer to the Dataverse side of the fence. You came in, I'm guessing, from Business Central since you have it in your Twitter profile. But I was looking through Twitter, and you had an interesting kind of tool you've kind of developed. So let's start with who are you? Give a little background on yourself, and then we'll kind of talk about the PowerApps Helper.
Yeah, well, I'm Michael from Germany, and I came into all this business from a totally different side. So normally I'm a real tech guy, but I discovered PowerApps to be a cool tool for me to show someone a cool technical demo based on my phone. For that reason, I started to discover Canvas apps and PowerApps. Afterwards, I discovered, the world behind the scenes is much bigger, and I saw there's a CRM behind the scenes, now called Dataverse. I have learned a lot about this, figured out how to extract the source code because I'm a tech guy. I want to read lines of code and see how I can modify my stuff. And mainly, I was building some Canvas apps for my company, especially for our automation scenarios at Azure DevOps. And for that reason, I'm focusing always on application lifecycle management. This means I want to have source control. I want to have a clean process to roll it out. And that's why I started to extract my Canvas apps stored in a Git repository. Okay. This was the time as Microsoft have published the Power Platform CLI or the PowerApps CLI. And I was a little bit boring to type in all the commands every time or build a pipeline which can use these commands. For that reason, for local development, I started to create an own extension for VS Code to do it automatically. And from time to time, extend it a little bit. And the latest change, which I've seen, is I've started to visualize my dependencies in a Dataverse environment. This is because, when you live with Dataverse and roll out some solutions time by time, some managed solutions, for instance, then you will have a problem, especially when you try to remove a managed solution. It have dependencies, but Dataverse is nothing which shows you where are these dependencies, and for instance, where are these components of your solution referenced by another solution.
Yep, that's a very common problem we've ran into, haven't we, Scott?
Yeah.
Yes. Dependencies is, I'd say probably one of the biggest challenges. So it was nice to see you, and and your screenshots both caught both Daryl and I's eyes, actually, because it's so great to see that visual graph of how things depend on each other, and especially from a solution perspective, because we're so used to seeing things from a much more of a lower level. Like when you create a export a solution, it just tells you, okay, well, it depends on a load of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hard to identify, well, how do I get that stuff that it depends on? So that was great. But it looks like this project you've been working on for quite some time. I mean, the whole...
Yeah. It started all with the source code.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Git commits, and they're going back quite some time. So how long have you been working on the overall solution?
I guess more than 1 year, but the current part, the visualization, is created a couple of weeks ago.
Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Are you kind of? I like the fact that you released that little sneak preview of the screenshot. It was like BuzzFeed style marketing. I was like, I like it.
Well, if it's anything like me, Michael, like you get really excited when you get something to work, like the first time. There's other like bugs and stuff. You can't like push it out yet. But you're like, oh, I got the first positive thing going. Yes, and so you get excited and you share. I did that exact same thing. I think this week with the early bound generator. It's like, hey, I've actually got it to build and work like the first time. A smooth transition. Like I got a lot more work to do, but I'm excited, and no one else cares except for me. But that's okay. But you let the world know. So yeah. So I funny enough, I think we completely skipped naming the tool. So the name of the tool is the PowerApps Helper. Okay, so fairly generic. So it could include lots of things, which apparently it does. And this is a plugin for VS Code, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it's available on the VS Code gallery, I guess, is how people access it.
It's on the Microsoft Marketplace. You can download it directly for VS Code.
Okay. All right. And the thing that caught our eye was the ability to take solutions and then be able to see the dependencies. So do you select a solution in your environment, say, show me all the dependencies? Do you give it some solutions to say, show me how they all touch each other? Like, how does the tool work?
That was the first idea. Afterwards, I discovered I need to move into this scenario from a different perspective. So right now I start directly from the environment and say, give me all solution dependencies when I try to remove a solution. This helped me to visualize the problems for the managed solutions. Last weekend or 2 weeks ago, I discovered, this is fine for a test and a prod environment where I have only managed solutions because of you have there the dependencies. But what is with your dev environment where you have only unmanaged solutions? You have also some dependencies between these solutions. And for that reason, I've pimped this tool a little bit so you can also see right now some relationships to other components in your active solution, for instance.
Awesome.
And this is hard to understand.
I think it's one of those tools that you kind of have to sort of run on your environment and then see what it comes up with. I think that was the initial impression I got. It's like, oh yeah, I have to try this out on that environment and really sort of see how it can kind of visualize things. So obviously it's in VS Code, and I think certainly, especially with the Pack CLI, we're spending longer and longer in VS Code because obviously that's where you now get the Pack CLI through that extension marketplace. And the other alternative would have been to put it in the XRM toolbox. So what was your kind of rationale, and how do you sort of manage the things like the authentication? Because that's one of the great things about the XRM toolbox, right? Is it handles all the authentication profiles for you, all that kind of stuff. So give us a bit of background on that.
Before we go any farther, hold on. Time out here. So XRM Toolbox. This may be new to Michael. Michael, do you know what the XRM Toolbox is? I know
yes,
I know it.
Okay, right now.
I just want to make sure that we're not. So you've learned it right now. Is that what you said?
No, I've discovered it a couple of months ago as a colleague told me, hey, you can do this with the XRM Toolbox.
Okay. All right, good. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't throwing something out there that was new. You're kind of new to this space. Okay, all right. Now go ahead and answer Scott's question, if we could, please.
So the authentication is pretty simple because of in VS Code, you have another extension. And from this extension, my own extension, the PowerApps Helper, depends on. This means the Azure authentication is done by the bearer token, where you sign in to a target environment. It's not so comfortable like the XRM toolbox, where you can have some different profiles and so on. You just sign in to an environment, click through the authentication stuff, and it uses, for instance, the user impersonation and generates a bearer token for you, and this bearer token is technically used to get this information out of CRM or out of Dataverse.
So even he uses CRM, Scott, and he's new. I love this.
It's never going to go.
I started a new project. Like, do we call it CRM? Do we call it CDS? Do we call it Dataverse? What are we calling it these days? And I think it was split like 50-50. So it's funny. It's funny.
I've learned the most challenging thing is really the authentication stuff. Afterwards, It's mostly simple. Then you have to learn where are the entities, how you can query this stuff. I've experimented a lot with virtual entities in the last month. I've created, for instance, a service in AWS, which I bind to my Dataverse and introduce it as virtual data service with fully CRUD support and cut events.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So just winding back to then how you're managing the authentication. So you're saying you're kind of using that bearer token, and you're getting that bearer token from the login that's coming from the standard PowerApps extension for VS Code, the Microsoft one. Is that right?
No, not really. It's another extension. It's the Azure Active Directory extension. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. So you just kind of you're adding in that Azure extension, and then you're logging into Azure, and then interesting.
And then the next step is just to switch the authority.
Just get a different scope. But it would be. I mean, I was kind of just starting to get really excited because I was thinking, I didn't know that you could use the Microsoft VS Code extension to sort of extend, because that would be cool, to be able to kind of create that Dataverse tool plugin type mechanism that you already have with the XRM toolbox, within VS Code. That kind of whole tool extension, plugin extension type mechanism would be awesome. So I kind of jumped the gun a little bit on that one, but
you can always extend the stuff in VS Code. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question. What if anyone wants to start writing VS Code extensions, what would be your kind of advice? Is there any experience that you could share with people?
Right now, I would say use ChatGPT. and let it write your code.
All right. That makes sense. I'm with you. Yeah.
write
Can't argue with
me an extension. Right, write me
Yeah,
a VS Code
why
extension.
not? Why not?
that.
It will answer you the question. It will create you the commands and all the stuff.
Yes.
It's extremely mighty.
That sounds like it belongs on a T-shirt. Extremely mighty. I could sell a whole bunch of those. Sounds like a good T-shirt. So so you actually don't even you're more bare bones even as far as the authentication than I guess I would even guess is available. That's pretty cool. I didn't even think about just using straight Azure Active Directory in order to do your authentication like that. I am not good at doing that because I haven't had to do that. I've lived in I will program in WinForms and not worry about authenticating XRM Toolbox world for a long time, and I have a hard time sticking out of that. So, but this is in Visual Studio Code. What other features do you have in there? I'm assuming some other ALM kind of related stuff, or what else do you have in there?
Yeah, one small feature. It's more or less born from pain because of every time when you update or roll out your own custom connector with the security configuration, you need to update your OAuth configuration manually. Or it was before the ALM accelerator was on the point like it is today. And for that reason, you every time need to go into this connector, click on change security, enter your client ID, client secret, your resource URL. And this is automated also by right click. It saved me a lot of time to do this because I clicked on the solution, everything was cached in my secrets, and it updated, for instance, 5 custom connectors in 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that, talking about things like, connectors and connections that go with them and secrets and stuff like that. What's your take on that whole piece around, how do you manage moving between environments and managing different connections and in different environment variables and having to share different apps with different users in different environments? That whole difficult. I kind of always refer it to the bit of a blind spot in ALM because it's very easy to start doing ALM, just moving solutions, and everyone's like, "Yay, great pipelines and all, it's fantastic." And then suddenly it's like, "Ooh, hang on a minute, how are we going to do this?"
Currently, it's the problem. You need to separate the custom connectors from your Canvas apps because of when you have both in the same solution and you import it into a new environment, you'll discover as a managed solution, it doesn't work really because of you need to prepare the connection first of all. So normally I separate both. I do my custom connectors in one solution, which I roll out independently. And afterwards, I use a second solution where I have my connection references or my Canvas apps, which you are using the connectors. This works pretty good. Right now, I'm working on a scenario where I do the same stuff on the API side. So automatically creating some microservices, updating an API management gateway, rolling out automatically the connector from API management gateway to my dev environment. And afterwards, I can move my solution from dev to test to production, as well as I can do the same stuff with my services through other backgrounds or to other environments.
So you're managing both the Azure piece and the Dataverse piece in the same kind of ALM cycle.
You need to do both in the same way because you have in both worlds productive development and test environments.
Yeah.
especially when you start creating a Canvas app, which is in relation to your microservice, and you extend both together.
Yeah, because a lot of people obviously will create a custom connector for something which is, elsewhere. Someone else manages versioning, completely separate release cycle, completely separate, even deployment cycle. So, but what you're talking about is where you've got everything. You're managing both the connector side of things, the power, and you're managing the server side, Azure side of things.
That sounds really complicated.
This is also mostly the problem at the Dynamics side, on the Business Central side. They are developing something, creating, for that reason, a new API page, which is available in the Microsoft connector. And now they are starting creating a Canvas app or a flow. Both needs to be rolled out stage by stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's having everything in code and having everything sort of managed in that GitHub repository becomes so much more important to manage that kind of branching and that consistency between different components getting rolled out. I mean, it's fascinating that when we get to that level, that the parallels between traditional software development, the stuff that we've been doing in Azure for so long, is now we're almost getting to that point where you can just do the same with the Dataverse environment and PowerApps, where you can manage those environments as though they were just Azure services. I think that's the way I see them. Is that's an ultimate goal of all of this, is to be able to say everything is code and having infrastructure as a service, and be able to roll things out easily and have development environments spun up easily, all those kind of things.
We are not so far away from this.
No.
It's just a small change we have to do at citizen developer side. We need to educate them, show them how they can do things in the right way. We have the Power Platform ALM stuff, the in product pipelines, which are the first step. So it's everything is there.
Carsten Groth about that. About the pipelines on our last episode, and it's clear that there's I think there's more work that's even coming down the line in that area as well. He was saying that it's sort of like the first step in that. So we're going to see even greater things coming. Do
you use the pipelines?
Personally, I've not used them in any production way yet. Because all of the environments I manage are all using DevOps pipelines to manage with like approvals, going through multiple different, release train approvals and all of those kind of things, and multiple different parallel. But yeah, I think, it's definitely, as things become, more features are added in there, especially the hooks that been talking about, like being able to hook into different parts of the pipeline. That sounds cool.
What are you using to manage the Azure DevOps pipelines? The ALM accelerator, or do you do this manually?
Using PowerApps tools for Azure DevOps, as well as the Pack CLI. Yeah.
So you have written all the pipelines manual, or you set up the new project by using the ALM accelerator and using the templates from Microsoft?
Mostly manual. Obviously, the accelerator is fantastic, isn't it? Because it gives you so much template code. I mean, if you think about, I think even if you read the accelerator, the blurb at the beginning of the project, the GitHub repository that they use, I think, one of it says in the first statement, it's like, well, this is an accelerator and provides you with some templates, so you can use it in its entirety just as a solution. But also, if you start to, look at what's going on there, there's a whole load of code that you can just sort of harvest and use in your own project. So yeah, I agree with you. It's fantastic. But when you're extracting stuff into code, so because obviously this tool you've got here has got all of these different other commands to it, right? So you can unpack unpack your solutions, and then pack and upload your solutions. So given that we've just talked about like the pipelines and the automation, we you know, what you're doing here is also like a manual version of that. So how do you communicate with the people who are doing the versioning, doing the actual check-ins, doing the updates, you know, creating new features, developers, citizen developers? If they're using your tool, how do you sort of educate them on the right way to do it, you know, in the right order, and on how to check things in, those kind, how to manage pull requests and all those sort of things?
Oh, this is pretty simple, because of the tool is right now only used for the dev environment and not longer for the test and prod environment. You can separate this by rights. You have no right to do this in your test and prod environment. To this environments, you can only get access by pipeline. And sometimes it makes sense to do this manually, because of when you start renaming stuff in your development solution. I guess every one of us knows this. You have started with my first test solution, and afterwards you discover, oh damn, what a stupid name.
Oh, God forbid you have to change the logical name of an attribute. Or, I mean,
we've all done that, and we have tools for that, Scott, don't we?
Well,
yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Daryl has a tool specifically built to correct
this. VS Code is your friend. You can search and replace.
Yeah. Daryl has a tool to correct my spelling mistakes. Basically, that's what it does.
I'm not even sure if you. So you said if you had you can search and replace if it's all code, and that doesn't quite work with like if you wanted to change the type of an attribute, because now you've got to deal with, okay, well, this control looks this way if it's this type, and this control looks that way if it's that type. So it's not an easy, simple search and replace. Maybe ChatGPT can give you a regex if you need to.
Nevertheless, you should know what you are doing.
No one knows what they're doing. We just pretend that we know.
It's all an illusion. All an illusion.
That's the way we find out things we don't
mostly
know.
CRM tells you, oh, you cannot import anymore.
Yes.
And then you need to figure out why you cannot import. You go to log files and search for the answer.
Yes.
Back in the day, you know, remember we used to call it concreting in of a solution, and it's where you would introduce a circular dependency, so you could never ever delete a component, because you can't delete that one because it depends on the other one. You can't delete that one. You do. I haven't got into that situation recently, so maybe it's not possible. The whole concreting in
maybe
scenario.
You're just smarter, Scott.
Yeah, or
you're not any better looking, but maybe you're smarter.
Oh, thanks, Daryl. I love you too. But it's you know, we all get longer in the tooth, and we don't do things stupid like we used to do. But you know, I think, you know, a reason I was asking about people running, you know, an unpack, download and unpack PowerApps is your command, and it says you know, extracts it and downloads the app in the folder. And because it's so difficult to manage noisy diffs, right? So we always talk about noisy diffs, and I find probably one of the biggest challenges with managing PowerApps solutions in source code is because if you've got 5 different development environments and they're all doing unpacks into source code, then you look at a merge of branches, you've got lots of noise. You know, sometimes it's really hard to know what's actually changed in amongst all the other stuff that's going on. So that was what I was kind of interested in, if you've got any advice based on, you know, your experience on how to manage those noisy
mostly for this, I just look to the relevant files, like the YAML files for the Canvas app, and ignore all the other stuff like the JSON files, which are flying around. I look also to the connectors or connections, if there is something weird, but on the end, this amount of files, you don't have a chance. You need to test it wisely.
I love the phrase, I look for something weird. I mean, obviously we all know that phrase in our head, but we can't teach that to somebody else. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, if you just look for something weird, like, well, what's weird? And you can't explain it because it's only through experience. And I guess that's where we hope ChatGPT figures it out, and then we can not have to tell people. I don't know.
Incidentally, talking of which, I just asked ChatGPT how to write. I said, write me a VS Code extension to connect to Microsoft Dataverse, because we were talking about it. And this is a classic. This is an absolute classic ChatGPT. So it kind of gives me the whole spiel about like, I'm a language AI model and I can't write software. Blah 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 blah. Disclaimer. But then it starts off to a good start. It uses Yeoman to create Yo code, and it's like create like a template. Good start, and then bang, straight in there fails because it's working in its parallel universe. And in the ChatGPT parallel universe, everything is awesome because it says npm install Microsoft PowerApps authentication. There's a library to do it in its own little world. It lives in this make-believe world where, of course, Microsoft have created a PowerApps, an NPN package for PowerApps authentication. Why wouldn't they? So it assumes it's there. Yeah. So there we go.
But it's a good question. Why does Microsoft not provide such a library?
I want to live in that world.
GPT and everyone else.
Maybe it's a private library that we don't know about. The ChatGPT.
Maybe.
Yeah.
What about that?
Yeah,
I had the same exact problem happen. I'm on the early volume generator. I was trying to work with a dictionary file, and it doesn't have like plurals of a lot of words. And so if you're trying to figure out based on everything being put together what the actual words should be split out as, like I kept having to add all these plurals. Okay, so ES is an S, and I was like, there's got to be a .NET library to be able to go through and convert this. So I said, hey, given a list of words, can you write me a program that converts them into the correct plural English version of it? And it invented some magical library that from NuGet you could download to do this. And I was like, that's awesome. And I'm looking like, that doesn't exist. Yeah. I tried to convince it, and I don't think it believed me.
No,
You made that up. He's like, I'm just a doer. I can't make anything up. It's like, but you did.
Yeah. It's got no skin in the game, right? It just goes, well, I'm just a language AI model. I can't.
It's kind of like the weatherman, Yeah. Oh well, I get things wrong. It's the weather. You can't get
that's right. Yeah.
Can't hold them accountable.
It says, I'm sorry, usually, let's give it that, really. It does apologize for its inaccuracies. But maybe one day we'll be able to feed in that PowerApps solution into the AI model, and it will just be able to get us the real, changes rather than, like you say, all of this weird stuff that's going on. I'm not sure what ChatGPT would actually define as weird JSON. I suspect it's probably quite good at identifying weird stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, interesting. So we talked about the creation of custom connectors. We've talked about the visualization. I gotta say that word slower.
It's a hard word, especially on Monday.
Yeah, and you come from Germany. I'm sure English is a second language or third or something else. And so yes, I'm sure it's not the same in German. But what other things are in this tool that people should be aware of that they should be looking to use?
I use a lot the tooltips for the environment tree, where you can open the tree nodes and see what canvas apps and flows are there. I've used these tooltips, for instance, to get the IDs of the objects, to see which entities I have. As well as from these tooltips, you will find there also some links, especially for Dataverse for Teams, to access for a Canvas app, the browser designer for PowerApps, which is obviously hidden from Microsoft.
Okay, I'm Scott. Do you know what that is? I don't know what that is. The browser designer for PowerApps. Was that like just the link to it?
It's a link to the designer with the right IDs and the URL, and it opens the
app itself
for the app itself.
Yeah, I got
it.
And
you don't have to do this inside of Microsoft Teams. It makes sense because SysDesigner have some more possibilities than the Azure Designer.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Especially you can import a template, you can save this template.
Not least, you don't accidentally press the back button and lose everything. You know?
Well,
that's the modern day equivalent of like Word locking up when we were like, in middle school and elementary, where like you're halfway through your paper, it's almost done, and it locks up and you lose it and you can't recover it and you've lost hours of work. The back button.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can see that being a huge benefit, just to get straight in there. And I guess it comes back to this whole thing about living and breathing in VS Code. I guess I'm probably stuck in the history of things. I just naturally go to make.powerapps.com. I just live in the solution editor. But if you can change that habit and have everything inside VS Code, I mean, what would be fantastic for me would be to actually have the solution editor baked into VS Code. I mean, that would be awesome. To actually have everything there.
Yes, Michael will do that next week and roll it out.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
This is what we do. This is what we do on this show, by the way.
He doesn't know this, but yes, we invite people on. We're like, hey, that's really cool. And then, but what if it did this? And we give you homework for you to do. That's usually like 10 times harder than what you've actually done so far. Yeah, just do it for us. It's on us. You can do it.
One thing. What I'm thinking about is to show which components have unmanaged layer, for instance.
Okay.
So this is another pain point which everyone have, especially when you import a solution. You don't see where are the unmanaged layer in your environment.
Have you looked at either or any of the tools in the XRM toolbox that kind of go through and do that?
I don't know.
There is one that does that. Yeah,
I think there's two. There's like a solution layer dependency thing. You can like select. I want to look at these tables or these entities or whatever, and then it'll go through and it takes a while.
You can look at the whole solution and get a summary, or you need to go step by step for each component.
You can select a whole solution, I believe, and then it will go through and or at least I think it's like a tree view where you can click the top one and they click all the ones down for you, something like that. So. Yeah,
sounds great.
You may spend some time looking to see if that's already out there before you spend time doing something that already exists. So that was my big issue with back in the day when I was creating my unit testing framework and Jordy has his, and we created it about the same time, but I never really searched very well to see if his was out there, and I could have saved myself a lot of time just using his. But that's okay. We live and we learn and we grow. You never stop learning. Are those in all of your tweets, Michael? I'm noticing that there are quite a few there. Your hashtag never stop learning. Are those in all of your tweets or just in the couple that I looked at?
Mostly in all of my tweets.
Most all tweets. All right, cool.
It's the hint to my blog post.
Your blog post.
So yeah, definitely your personal motto, definitely.
Yeah.
Michael, never stop learning, Miguel. Yes, that works. Yeah. Kind of close.
Today I have learned something new. There is already a tool for the layer problem in the CRM toolbox. So
yes.
It's the truth. You never stop learning. Otherwise you die.
When you're dead, it's kind of hard to learn. I agree.
Yeah.
It kind of gets in the way. It's a bit of a
When you wake up and feel no pain, something is wrong.
Okay, so we've got the visualization of all the environments and all your tooltips kind of stuff to see what's in there. Is there other things in here? Like how much? Do we need to split this up into 2 episodes? Like how many more things you got in this little helper here?
I guess there's nothing else right now.
Oh, okay. Well, so you're working on the visual solution dependencies. You were thinking about maybe doing some more work on that as well, but now we said, hey, maybe it already exists in the XRM toolbox, so you may switch in that. Is there anything else you're thinking ahead in the back of your mind of wouldn't it be nice if I had time to do X, Y, or Z?
Right now, not especially about the tool, more about the process. Because I guess no one have a real idea how to roll out connectors and all the stuff together. There's no blueprint anywhere.
Yeah. And that's the ALM process you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems kind of making it more complicated to me. It's almost like, why don't you have a separate ALM process for both, and that way you don't have to marriage them together to get them to work together. But I don't know enough. I've never done it before. So, but has that worked out well for you? And you're like, yes, this is the way to go, or is it? It could be the way to go. It could not be the way to go. Like, what's your feeling on that?
Right now, the ALM process for Power Platform works well, but it's not aligned to an ALM process in the other world. So what is, if you want to create a custom connector or an API, how do you design this API to make it changeable in the future, especially to access a different environment at the Azure side, for instance, or to move your Canvas app using this API, but pointing back to the development environment, for instance, to test something.
All those fun things.
Yeah, it's practical problems.
Yeah, solution blind ALM blind spots. That's what it is.
Yeah. What is if you work together with virtual tables? It's the same stuff. Sometimes you struggle to set up the stuff.
Yeah. Are you thinking of, I haven't seen in there, like managing sort of environment variables through some kind of like the deployment settings type style mechanism?
When you deploy, I haven't understood the question.
So when you deploy a solution, you can also provide like a deployment settings.json file, which is all of the like connection IDs and the environment variable values.
This is the stuff what the LM accelerator does.
Well, the LM accelerator has its own sort of version of it's got like an extended version of that. But you
can prepare a rollout to a new environment, and during the preparation, you collect this information. You set up the ID in a target environment, or the connection in target environment, collect the ID back to the code, and the code is checked in, as well as you set up environment variables and so on. So this is, in my opinion, not a problem. It's a good way.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. And then, because the accelerator handles a sort of like a folder structure per environment, and then you have your settings inside that folder, which I always think is a good way of sort of having an easy to understand set of and then obviously have to manage secrets. So if you don't want to necessarily have all your client client IDs and secrets in source code, so you want to store those in Azure Vault or something like that.
Yeah, in Key Vault, you can do this right now, I guess.
Yeah.
You can also connect your environment variables to a Key Vault.
Well, when it comes out of preview, that's one of the really frustrating things at the moment is that it's in preview. It's just it would be lovely if we could use that in production. It really would be.
To be honest, when you work with Canvas apps, you enable each of these preview features to get something working. So, what's the problem?
Yes, I feel that pain a lot too. Where I'm like, well, in order for this to work, I have to turn on the preview feature. But this is stuff that's like business critical. So why is it still in preview? And I try to find like the guy at Microsoft that like knows about it. Like, am I going to marry myself to the bad person here? Like, what's going on? Like, is this okay or is this not okay? Why is it still in preview? I don't understand. What's the big deal? So I'm with that in the just use it. It's preview, and that's definitely the Canvas app side of the world where like all the
on the other hand, Canvas apps are made for the quick win. So something might break, but you want to have the quick win, and this is the important part.
Yeah. Yes. I think with what's nice about the preview stuff in Canvas and custom pages is that it gets compiled as that version. There's a packaging process that's linked to the version of the runtime. So if you're using a feature, most of the time it's going to be sort of baked into that version of the runtime. And those versions, they just sort of stay around mostly for kind of ever. I don't know if there's an expiry. Whereas something that's so sort of platform based, as environment variables and key vault integration, I could just imagine coming in on a Monday morning and nothing works because you can't.
It's normally the Friday when things start to fail. Every time when Microsoft rolls out a new feature or a new release.
Yeah, exactly. And you call up support and they go, well, it's a preview feature. Sorry about that.
We have never heard about this. Oh, damn.
Yeah, so it's sometimes stuck between a rock and a hard place. But yeah, hopefully it will come out soon.
Okay. Well, Michael, is there anything else that you'd like to share or like to talk about before we wrap this up? Anything we're missing?
Not really. So
Really?
I guess we have talked a lot about stuff.
Yeah, that's the point. We've talked about it. We've kind of dived into it.
It's nice to talk with you guys. It's a little bit weird because I see my camera is frozen. I have no idea what happens.
Your camera froze. We'll see. It uploads from afterwards. So sometimes we can have really, really bad audio and stuff, and it sometimes works just fine. So maybe we've tempted the fates with this transatlantic internet cable long enough. I don't know, but
there's that famous episode that we did with Ben Vollmer, who he did it from his like a camper van in the middle of the desert. I think it was that was HTTP by carrier pigeon.
Oh, that's horrible.
It was pretty. The quality was okay. I think it took him like a day or something to upload the data.
Yes, it was pretty bad. It was hard to do.
It was
because you ask a question, you wait 2 minutes. Like, did he get it? Did he answer it? I don't know. So we managed to salvage together, and hopefully we won't ever have to do that again. But Michael, really appreciate you coming on. It's great seeing someone that's fairly new to the space dive in and be creating very useful things. That's always great. I think it's because people come in with this idea or this experience of how good things can be, and then they kind of come into our weird Dataverse world. They're like, oh, well, why don't you have something that does this like everybody else does? And so then you go and implement it. So it's great. It's the fresh new blood, new perspective. So we appreciate that, and we hope that you being on the show helped to spread the word a little bit about this tool that you got here.
Hopefully, I believe strongly this. Every time when you use the Power Platform, it is the way to the end user, and in business, it doesn't matter where are your data. Be it anywhere in your database, in your Azure service, anywhere else. It doesn't matter. You need to bring this data to the customer, to the user, and help them to do something with it.
Yes. And not even you. You need to let the user bring it to themselves, too.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate lifestyle. Yes, I'll just have them do the work themselves, and I'll manage everything else. So anyway, Michael, if people have any questions or would like to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you? What's your
it's the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter and just shoot me a mail or connect with me.
His Twitter @name is @MME2K. So
I know, stupid name.
Mine's my name.
You know this moment when you try to create a Twitter handle and say, "Oh damn,
yes,
what should I use?"
It's always fun. Always fun.
Daryl's is Crazy Boy 572. So.
Come on, Scott. Come on, Crazy Boy 572. All right, that's fun. Well, Scott, that's how our listeners can get a hold of our guests. How can our listeners get a hold of us?
Yeah, you can. It's not crazy boy. It is cast@xrmtoolbox.com if you want to get us by email, and at XRM Toolcast on social media. Yeah, thanks ever so much, Michael, for coming on. It's been really interesting talking to you about everything. And I'm definitely going to be running through my environments through your visualization tools. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
Hopefully it works.
You'll hear our phone. That's our, we're very good at handing out homework.
Okay. Maybe you contribute to the GitHub repository. If you have figured out how to improve the VS Code extension by ChatGPT, Scott. I'll let it. Ask ChatGPT to do this for you.
Once ChatGPT starts doing pull requests, so I can start going on vacation.
Yeah, I think that's Skynet is going to happen if that happens.
Yes, probably will. Well, Mike, it's good talking to you. Have a great day, and we may talk to you later.
Thanks for having me on the show. Bye-bye. See you.
All right. Bye. This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl and Scott Durrell. Produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @XRM Toolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.